Australia, a land of extremes, of massive landscapes, brutal climate, and a vast and unforgiving wilderness. One day I dreamt that I would experience riding across this great country myself, and now, unbelievably, my time has come. I've planned a 6,000 kilometre route from Sydney down to Melbourne, and then up past Adelaide to cross the infamous Nullarbor Plain to Perth on the west coast. So far, I've only ridden about 800 kilometres to a coastal town southwest of Melbourne called Apollo Bay, but already I've come to understand how enormous this country really is, and I haven't even experienced Australia's infamous outback. What I have experienced though is a tantalising flavour of what's to come. Incredible roads, life-affirming rides, glorious feelings of fear and excitement, but above all, a warm and incredibly hospitable people. As morning breaks over Apollo Bay, I can't wait to venture further into this awe-inspiring country. Now, it may look beautiful Apollo Bay this morning, and it is, but it is quite cold, so beware, right? September, down these parts, right down the bottom, nearly the southernmost point probably of Australia, it is quite chilly. Apollo Bay starts for us this ride down the Great Ocean Road. Now the Great Ocean Road is one of the most famous rides probably in the world, I guess, not only in Australia, and it runs from here for about 100 miles down the coast that way. And it's also, would you believe, the biggest war memorial in the world, and the reason being is that the troops who were coming back from World War I and World War II actually built this road in memory of their fallen brothers. As I clamber aboard my Harley Street Glide, or to give it its other name, my one-bed apartment, the ride out of Apollo Bay is full of anticipation. I'm heading about 100 miles to a place called Warrnambool, and just out of Apollo Bay I get my first glimpse of the sea. But just as I'm looking forward to a whole lot more, the road heads inland, obscuring my view of any coastal vistas whatsoever. Cutting through forests and lush farmland, the ride is enthralling, with sweeping bends and memorable views, but where's the coast? But when I think all is lost, I reappear near a coastal lookout, and am greeted by some terribly nice chaps with a passion for classic British sports cars.
Now, where are you going and what are you doing, mate? We're doing the Great Ocean Road. It's been on our list for a long, long time to drive the Ocean Road in our pride and joys with the girls.
The wives are in the cars and you're out. Is that a normal thing?
Yeah, they don't like getting the hair messed up.
No, they're very fortunate they know their place.
There are some serious British pieces of classic vehicle here.
That's what sports cars are all about. They've got to be British. British are the best sports cars. The Americans thought they could do it, but the British are the ones that can do it.
To anyone who hasn't come here, what would you say to them?
They're missing one of the greatest drives in Australia, without doubt. There's two things you've got to do. You've got to do the Great Ocean Road, and then come back and do it again.
The idea of doing it again is an interesting thought, especially when I still need to be convinced I need to do it at all. As I follow these venerable classics driving together along this famous stretch of road, I clean forget that I still haven't seen any coastline. All I have seen is a vast amount of gorse bushes that hopefully have about 30 miles down the road, that might all change. Those guys in the old British cars were mixing it a little bit. Hey, well look, right, call me a whinging Pom, but I am. The weather's setting. It's very, very windy, and it has been really windy for the last 25 clicks or something. Great, dunno. Ocean, certainly haven't seen any of that. Road, sure, lots of road. Lovely bends, alright. But it's not breathtaking, you know. Nice vistas, nice corners. Let's just hope it improves, huh? And improve, it surely does. With the blessing of a window in the weather, it's only a short walk down to the beach to experience one of Australia's great natural wonders, the 12 Apostles, a collection of huge rock formations that rise out of the sea, having been abandoned to the ocean by the eroding headland.
Well, the 12 Apostles are amazing from the ground, but the way to see them is by helicopter.
Well, this, I guess, makes up for what's gone before. This coastline, from way up above, even with the weather closing in again, is mind-blowing.
Well, life's got a whole lot better, I think. I haven't seen much ocean for about 50 miles, and then suddenly, come on, feet and boots.
The 12 Apostles used to be called the Sowan Piglets, but was renamed in 1922 to attract more tourists. The strange thing is that there wasn't ever 12 stacks or apostles, only 9, and then in 2005, 9 became 8 when one stack fell into the sea. Either way, this rugged stretch of coastline between Princetown and Peterborough is a true revelation. Shame you can't see it from the road.
If you want to do this trip, which I heartily recommend, it's $145 or so, about £100 for a 15-minute drive per person. Absolute lost in money. What a fantastic trip, mate. Next motorcycling quite Monday.
My relationship with this coastline now rejuvenated, I'm back on the sofa, looking for somewhere to have some lunch. And with the sun returning, I rumble into a place called Port Campbell to reflect perhaps on the error of my ways. You know what? We joined the Ocean Road about 50 miles further down at Apollo Bay, where we should have joined it probably at Geelong. And that 50 miles from Geelong down to Apollo Bay, I think, may well have had the coastal riding that I imagined this route to be. You know, I imagined this road to be like Highway 1 from San Francisco down to Los Angeles, where you're hugging the coast and the sandy beaches all the time. From my experience so far, that is not the Great Ocean Road. But would I want to be somewhere else? Absolutely not. Tanking up and leaving Port Campbell behind, it's a matter of 50 miles or so to our evening stop in Warrnambool. In my head, I've now accepted the Great Ocean Road for what it is, and that makes life a whole lot easier to deal with. Acceptance, I'm told, is halfway to contentment. From Port Campbell, what's left of the Great Ocean Road weaves its way through some of the finest Australian countryside I've had the pleasure to ride through. With the sun slowly setting and shining into my eyes, breaking out my secret weapon of my baseball cap to wear under my lid allows me to just kick back and bask in the warming embers of the day. All too quickly, Warrnambool becomes a reality. That ride was from Port Campbell. Absolutely lovely. It wasn't really a coastal road, it was sort of more a road through beautiful countryside. All the same, it was glorious. I guess I had expectations of the Great Ocean Road, and those expectations were misguided, I think, really. And that's been the key to today, because it is an amazing road, but it just isn't what I thought it was going to be. Anyway, we'll see what this place has to offer in the morning. Next morning, the sun rises into a blood-red sky over the ancient port of Warrnambool. Well, good morning from Warrnambool, and what a beautiful morning it is. Now look, this place has an illustrious seafaring history, and here at the Maritime Village, it takes you right back to a period of time when Britannia ruled the waves. Back in the 1870s, Britain not only ruled the waves, but also Australia. This is the exquisite Flagstaff Maritime Village, an adjoining garrison that has been lovingly recreated to illustrate what Warrnambool's daily life was really like under British rule in the Victorian period. In the late 1800s, thousands of ships commuted between the UK and Warrnambool, braving this infamous coastline known as the Shipwreck Coast. If you were lucky enough to survive the passage, this is the Australia that beckoned. Pete is the curator.
This side of the properties symbolises the normal trades that would have been in the maritime port at that time. So we've got shipbuilders, we've got a pub, of course, they've got a sailmaker's loft, because they would have been repairing the sails as the ships come in. So, and of course, the other side of the properties is the historic part of the lighthouse complex. So the lighthouses were built originally down in the port area around the 1850s, and they were moved up to Flagstaff Hill around the 1870s period. So.
Oh, there's the garrison up there. Were the guns ever used in anger or not?
Look, they weren't used in anger. There was obviously some practice going on. They were built really around that 1880s period when they were trying to protect the ports from what they saw as a bit of a threat from the other superpowers of the world. So this was basically one of the most isolated parts of the British colony at that stage, and they were under the threat of Russian invasion, or even Americans were sort of sniffing around to try and expand their colonies. And so they built the garrisons along our coastline. When they were fully operational, they could fire a projectile about 6 miles out to sea, and they were really state-of-the-art back in the 1880s.
You did mention about sustenance, didn't you? And you, cappuccinos?
Yeah, we do have, well, that technology has arrived in the 1870s.
Where would that be?
Well, that's up the top of the hill. We might be able to find you a cappuccino later.
See you later. Leaving Warrnambool, some 270 kilometres is on the agenda today, riding northwest to a town called Naracoorte. Leaving the Great Ocean Road behind, I'm looking forward to new adventures with no preconceptions. The Harley as ever delights. I can relax and soak up the A1, accompanied by the comforting and joyously monotonous thud of its huge V-twin. But my state of contentment is to be short-lived. About 20 miles out of town, I'm hit by a 60-mile-an-hour crosswind. Not the best thing to endure when your motorcycle is about as aerodynamic as a warehouse. The wind is so strong, it takes all my concentration to avoid throwing myself and the bike into the rather inviting countryside. But to make matters worse, every digger and dump truck in the area seems to be digging up the A1. The vistas are nice though. This is not the type of weather, right, to have a wee in the wrong direction, I found out. It is horrendously windy here. Coupled with that, obviously the roadworks. So it's beautifully sunny, but it is difficult to ride. Just one other thing here. I kind of get that feeling that we are going back into the wilderness. And this house over here kind of sort of sums it up. I think someone's going to come out with a chainsaw. I'll tell you what they do though, is they do their washing. Now that washing line's going round and round over there, was invented, I'm told, in Australia. So now I know who to blame. In the middle of the night when I walk out to the garden and smack my head. Back in the saddle, on the way to a small town called Casterton. The wind at last relents and the roadworks disappear. I can now resume proceedings and soak up the sunshine and revel in the scenery. As we ride into Casterton, surely things can only get better. Well, welcome to Casterton. Now this place is rather quaint and nice. We stopped here for a quick coffee on our way through. It is actually, or its main claim to fame, is the birthplace of the Kelpie dog. Now what's a Kelpie dog? It's sort of a collie that rounds up sheep. It is an enforced stop actually, because we've just been nicked by the pigs. And they give us a little notice like that, and it reads, this is relevant to Luke, the cameraman, not me, and it reads that he has failed to wear properly a fastened and adjusted seatbelt as a passenger, which basically means he was hanging out filming. Sum of $244, which I think is just a little bit excessive for us trying to promote Australia, but there you go. One thing around here, you do get the feeling in Australia, I do, coming from England, that this is a police state slightly, just slightly, and that everyone quite rightly abides by the law, but I do believe that if you pass wind without a licence, you're going to be nicked. It's now about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and there is still over 100 miles to ride to Naracoorte. My thoughts are going back to my dangerous old ways of having to ride at night come flooding back. Riding from Sydney to Melbourne, we were constantly warned not to ride at dusk, for fear of hitting something large and furry, like a kangaroo or a wombat, the consequences of which don't bear thinking about. Luckily, the fabulous riding makes sure the fear is fleeting, with only a flock of cockatoos hinting at the strange fauna that could lurk in the undergrowth. Well, that's what we came here for, eh? Mile upon mile of dead straight road. This road to Naracoorte is absolutely stunning. The wildlife, you know, there's cockatoos flying everywhere and parrots and strange things in the bushes. Interestingly, you know, the sun's gone in and the clouds come over. We've had the odd shower. But strangely, unlike the UK when you're driving through woods and that kind of stuff, because the bark of the trees is white, it takes on a different dimension, and consequently you don't really worry that the sun isn't out. You know, you're not going to get burned to a cinder, and you can just kick back and cruise. And that's what I think Australia's all about: taking it easy, enjoying the journey, and not worrying too much about that destination. Dusk is only an hour away, so I am worrying slightly about getting to that destination. But with some brisk yet seriously entertaining riding, I arrive in Naracoorte before the kangaroos' happy hour. This is Naracoorte, and it looks... Anyway, look, tomorrow we're going to go deep underground, but in the meantime, I'm going to bed. Morning in Naracoorte is a pretty laid-back affair, but for a town built on the riches of sheep farming, I can't see why there's a large gun on display in the square. Perhaps it was a very lazy way of making lamb kebabs. But as lovely as Naracoorte may be on the surface, we're actually here to visit some of the greatest cave systems in Australia. Morning from Naracoorte. Hey, one thing I like about my Beetle jacket is it keeps my belly in. Now look, somewhere along the line last night, I forgot to say, we crossed from Victoria into South Australia, which means we're only 8.5 hours rather than 9 hours ahead of the UK. Kind of weird, half an hour. And I wonder if the time difference is the same underground. Just up the road is the Narracourt Caves National Park, and an excellent fella called Frank is waiting to greet us. Well, he's got to be excellent, he's a biker. Alas for Frank though, I'm not immediately wanting to talk caves. I haven't had a beer for 24 years, Frank. What do you reckon?
I thought there was something weird.
There was something weird, isn't there? It's not just the long hair.
And you came to Australia.
And I came to Australia. I know, but not under duress as well.
Oh, but you weren't dragged out of Jonesy.
No.
Oh.
And that makes a change, doesn't it? And I also point out that my hair isn't highlighted. Frank, I thought that was a victory. But it's not, it's a triumph. It's British, Frank.
Right. I was born in England.
Were you?
I've had a certificate for a few years now.
Have you been cured?
I've been cured, yeah. Had a little lobotomy and everything.
Did you? Really? So now all you just think about is beer. So now look, why did you buy the Triumph then?
I wanted a bike where I could put both feet on the ground initially. Took a Harley for a ride. Wasn't overly impressed. But the same dealer was selling Triumphs. Had one of these on the showroom floor and let me take it for a ride, and I was smitten. I find it much more relaxing, much more likely to keep my licence.
We felt the strong arm of the law yesterday.
You did?
Actually, yeah. He was quite a fat strong arm of the law, I have to say.
Yeah, very strong.
And quite chippy.
In Victoria or South Australia?
Luckily in Victoria, so we got a clean sheet this morning.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah, but we are $244 the lighter. The Narracourt Caves National Park is a world-famous attraction. This cave system, stretching over some 3.5 square kilometres, was created 30 million years ago. How were these caves formed, Frank?
Well, basically they were originally dissolved away just by the groundwater sitting in the limestone rock. Limestone being soluble in a weak acid. The waters dissolve these spaces away.
And what's left is these incredible stalagmites and stalactites. Am I right that stalagmites might grow, stalactites hold on tight? Is that right?
That's the way we use. There's lots of ways to remember, but that's the cleanest one, so we'll stick with that one.
Yeah, let's stick with that one, Frank. But the structures that they leave behind are absolutely stunning.
Many different shapes can form just from the basic action of water trickling through a rock.
And venturing further, some of the shapes down here are mind-blowing. Now that's stunning, mate.
That's not bad, is it?
That is
it's
stunning.
A very beautiful bit of cave work.
With a reflection there.
It's fantastic.
Beautiful, man.
It depends where you stand. It looks really good in some spots.
Hey, look, over there, though, we've got, what do you call those, straws or something?
There's straws,
a lot
yes.
of stalactites.
That's right. They can get quite long, but they're hollow tubes of crystal forming around the drops as the drops come in. The crystal forms around, and they can grow into long, skinny, hollow straws.
Okay, so those are the first formations of stalactites.
Generally baby stalactites.
Baby stalactites. These caves are an absolute must. Rejuvenated by my time brandishing my torch and chatting with Frank, life's looking alright. Hey look, I guess on every road trip you do with your biker mates or whatever you do, you've got to obviously, have a good time really. And, you're not going to have a decent cameraman, are you, who isn't a good lad? So we've sacrificed quality for being someone really nice. And this is Luke, if you haven't seen him before. There he is, look at that! Hey little Lukey! Not the most talented of cameramen, obviously, but a bloody nice bloke. Sumptuous boudoir of a bike, cranking up the stereo, I'm riding about 160 kilometres towards Adelaide, heading north on the A66. It may not be Route 66, but still an utter joy to be on. The road is arrow straight, with only the miles and miles of vineyards either side to keep me company. Obviously, this must be a wine region. Can't believe the world drinks so much wine, but I guess with my wife on the planet, production has to be constant. This ride to the folks that live here is probably just mundane, but to me, the road is perfect Harley terrain, wide and engaging, with not much work to do in the saddle. That road was tremendous. Sitting back, checking the views out, listening to a bit of AC/DC. Don't get better. Now look, we're in Keith now, and we're heading up to this place called Taylor Dane, I think, or was that an 80s pop band? With an 80s disco riff on the CD, in homage to Taylor Dane, the 60 Clips passes by quick as you like, to a little kind of nowhere town, not actually called Taylor Dane at all, but Tailem Bend. Next morning, the 1,487 inhabitants of Tailem Bend, and me for that matter, wake from our slumbers to a rather cold, overcast start to proceedings. But the motel is lovely in any weather. Well, this is our digs for the night here at Tailem Bend, this sweet little motel. I think I've made a decision actually, and that decision is this, that I'm not going to ride into Adelaide tomorrow. If we go into Adelaide, you know, it's frenetic, it's crazy, and cities always slow us down. So I've decided to stay away from it tomorrow and kind of immerse myself in the remoteness of this landscape and these little country towns. Hey, look, I'll show you a room. They're basic, but I'll tell you what, they have everything I want. So look, it ain't the Ritz really, is it? But for me, it's perfect. You've got your own bed. Lovely towels, everything's clean normally. You've got a little bed over there, a little room for your friends if you want to entertain. And telly, fridge, which is a critical thing here. And also what's critical for me is the coffee making facilities. Oh, and in here, is your little bathroom. Again, not exactly lavish, but it's clean, tidy and nice. That's all I need. Now look, right, price-wise, I think this one's about $100 a night. So what's that? That's about 60 quid. Now Tailem Bend is called Tailem Bend because it's actually on a couple of bends on the River Murray, which is behind me. Now this river is actually the third longest in the world that you can sail a boat down. I only said sail because on my bit of paper here, right, it says navigable. Navigable, that's right, isn't it? Not navigable. Navigable. It's the longest, third longest navigable river in the world after the Amazon and the Nile. It was a major trade route from Sydney to Adelaide, but now there isn't even a bridge across the river here. You have to make do with a ferry. It's about 16 miles to my next stop to meet some fellas who indulge in the fine art of dirt track speedway. The weather could be a lot better. It's chilly with the constant threat of rain. The road is drab and doesn't really feel like Australia. It's more akin to a soulless A-road round Frankfurt. But as I ride into town, at least this place is big enough to have a road bridge to be proud of. So proud, in fact, they named it Murray Bridge. That's pretty miserable, that. Just coupled with a cold and a little bit of rain. But hey, look, we're here in Murray Bridge. Doesn't look too bad at all, actually. And I guess going over that bridge is why it's called Murray Bridge. You know what? You just learn to expect all different kinds of weather conditions wherever you are in the world. And so I've sort of wrapped up snug. And even though it is cold, let's just hope the rain stays off, As I grab a quick coffee, a passing biker has stopped to say hello. Tony?
Yes.
Well, what's it like here in Murray Bridge?
That's all right, mate. No, it's not a bad little place. We grew up, we survived. Just.
What's it like living in small town Australia? Would you call Murray Bridge small town Australia?
Yeah, Yeah, well, I hated it for years.
Did you?
Yeah, but I found out it wasn't the town, it was me. Now I like it.
Do you like yourself now?
Yeah, I think I probably do. Yeah, probably. Yeah, I'm not at war with the world anymore.
For me, riding through, I get the feeling that there's, good, strong community spirit in each town I go through. People do look at you as if, like, who the heck are they?
Well, we've got a terrific communication system here in this country, and whenever we hear any funny sounding pommy sort of individuals come along, we just wire ahead and we let the police know and everybody know, and it's all set up. That's how they know you're coming.
God, really?
Only
Tony?
good for Poms. New Zealanders get a pass.
How do you and New Zealanders get on then?
No, we get on good. We feel like they're our poor cousins, and we need to look after them.
England has lost its sense of humour, by the way, Tony.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's called political correctness.
We have a lot of. I think that's a disease.
Is it? Well, it may not be Monaco or Silverstone. There are no yachts or bikini-clad beauties, but Murray Bridge is home to one of the most famous speedway circuits in Australia. Now, for those of you who don't know, speedway is all about riding a motorcycle as fast as you can round a clay track. But for me, the gladiators of the sport are the sidecar boys. And they don't come much better than these fellas. Mick and Paul are the reigning world champions at the sport, slithering and sliding their 1000cc contraption round bank circuits like this all over the world in the quest for their particular form of adrenaline addiction. I mean, how fast are you going on a circuit like this?
Around this particular circuit, we're probably hitting around 130 kilometres an hour.
130 kilometres an hour?
Yeah.
Round this?
Yeah.
What amazes me is the angle of the sidecar wheel.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like that.
Yeah, well, the sidecar wheel plays a big part because we rely on that to hold us from going too sideways.
Now, I may be a bit stupid here, but I can't see a brake.
No brakes. No.
Why haven't you got any brakes on it?
It's actually in the rule books not to have brakes. Main reason being it'd actually be dangerous with brakes because we're going so fast it'd be hard for the guy behind you to pull up if you did brake. And if you do need to stop, well, it's just a matter of throwing it sideways and the chair wheel acts as a brake. So we can actually stop them a lot quicker than you'd think.
Riding out at Murray Bridge, I can't help thinking that while Formula One drivers are mollycoddled in their cotton wool cars, getting tens of millions, while Mick and Paul get a bag of wine gums, and only if they win. Doesn't seem quite right, but life, I guess, has never been fair. All the guidebooks say to avoid this area at all costs, but what do they know? Like everywhere in this world, it's the people that make a place so special, and that means I, for one, loved Murray Bridge. It's here that I should turn left to Adelaide, but I feel free now. I've made the decision to avoid the big city, so I can spiritually prepare for the wilderness that lies ahead. As I ride the 65 miles up to a place called Clare, my time in civilization is slowly coming to an end. In a couple of days, I hit the outback and embark on my crossing of the infamous Nullarbor Plain to Perth on the west coast. But before those extremes, I can revel in this landscape and its breathtaking beauty. I don't think you can get tired of riding in Australia. This road out of Murray Bridge is a peach again. On the one side, you have this sort of feeling of aridness, I think, that's given by the eucalyptus trees and the sort of dust on the side of the road. But when you look out over the fences and all that kind of stuff, there's lush pasture and beautiful trees. And then also you come past these incredible lakes. So the scenery is ever changing, And as we head up towards the Nullarbor Plain and the outback, I just feel that one's getting even more remote. The roads are stunning. This country's stunning. And I must say, I'm having a ball. To complement the experience even further, as I ride to Clare, the sun is desperately trying to make an appearance. And as I roll into my next port of call, the evening embers are almost ethereal, drenching the local church. Now, when you come to Australia, you have to do something on wine, but there are very few vineyards that can boast mixing wine production with spirituality. This vineyard is called Seven Hills and was started by two Jesuit priests who came to Australia in 1848. Today the vineyard boasts over 100 hectares of vines, producing 35,000 cases per year of their 19 different varieties of wine. The Jesuits still own the vineyard, and their followers also use Seven Hills as a refuge for contemplation. But while others seek inspiration, Craig looks after the cultivation.
This is the spiritual home for the Jesuits. In the 1840s, when they first come out from Europe, they were escaping religious persecution in Europe. And there wasn't hardly any Catholic presence at that time in Australia. They started the vineyard because they needed altar wine for their religious beliefs and the church services, and there wasn't anything like that in Australia at the time. So that was their main reason for starting the vineyard back then.
But the Jesuits still own the vineyard.
Yeah, they are, yeah.
And the proceeds go to all the good causes around the world? How does that work?
Well, yeah, it goes to all the charitable works. And it's great working here too, because we all know that our works, our labours, don't go to someone's golf clubs. It goes to an actual higher spiritual, end, which is great. It's a great place to work.
Over 25% of the wine production here is still exported around the world. For the Jesuits, burgeoning need for sacramental wine. But you can pop in and choose from a vast, eclectic collection on sale in their winery. I think if the wife came here, she just might find God. As morning breaks over Clare, it seems the sun has battled the clouds overnight and won. Well, hang on a second, This morning, this little town of Clare has basked in sunshine. Just the last couple of days have been cold and slightly overcast. And for me, Australia's all about big blue skies. Hopefully today, things are going to change. Now we're heading up about 120 miles to a little place called Quorn. The sun beats down and the riding is heavenly. As ever, the Harley does what it's told as the scenery flashes by. The landscape is slowly changing to a slightly more arid hue. Gone are the lush pastures, peppered with sheep and cows. Now the fields, the size of which I've never seen before, grow mile upon mile of arable crops. And with the sun as my constant companion, it's very easy to understand that just a couple of 100 miles up the road, another altogether very different adventure lies ahead. The beginning of the outback and the Nullarbor Plain. My God, how big are those fields? How much corn can you harvest? Thought I'd just stop here. This is a little place called Laura, and serves a good cappuccino, I have to say. I think Australia really is the true adventure on the bike, and I think that's what keeps you going on the motorbike, really. And if that element isn't in a ride, then I don't believe it is a greatest motorcycle ride. But this town, hey, I quite like Laura. I could live here. I kind of feel that I'm perhaps in a sort of set of Neighbours or something like that, or Home and Away. Not that I've ever watched it. Out of Clare, this fabulous ribbon of road, the B82 continues north, slicing through yet more idyllic countryside. The traffic, as ever, is sparse, but every so often there's the odd caravan to circumnavigate and a few kindred spirits to overtake. Slowly the farmland gives way to bush, the temperature rises, and I immediately feel the pace of life in the countryside around me slowing. I guess there's no need to hurry here, on the fringes of the outback. Urban modernity passed this place by years ago. Rolling into Quorn though, it seems like the Harley has transported me into an ancient world. The town of Quorn not only marks our gateway into the outback, but it also reflects a period of time when the railroad ruled the world. Back in the early 1900s, Quorn was the hub of Australia's rail network, with the main routes north to south and east to west coming through Quorn. But with the advent of new rail routes and the motor car, Quorn's importance as a railway junction has all but disappeared. But the legacy of the heady days of steam has fortunately remained for us tourists to enjoy. A stretch of track, along with several steam engines, still operate on this line. You know, sometimes on a trip, you get a bit homesick, mainly because my other son Charlie would absolutely die to be here. He's obsessed by steam trains. Now look, right, this is the Justin Hancock, and it's one of the engines that run on this line. And it is a hugely majestic sight to see it coming down the tracks to here. I can see also why people get into steam engines so obsessively. I mean, it's sort of hissing away behind me. It doesn't seem to be sort of inanimate. It seems to be some kind of being with its own kind of soul. What an amazing thing it is. The restoration of both these glorious engines and the line itself is down to the commitment of a small band of volunteers like Dave, who have dedicated their lives to their passion for steam. What class is that engine?
This class is a W class, built in Manchester in 1951.
So how many have you got still running today?
Today we've got 3 still running, and we've got 1 spare one.
Okay, just in case.
Just in case, yeah. Drivers reckon they talk to them when they're driving them. So what you put into them is what they give you back.
Really?
If you don't behave, they won't behave.
If having a ride on a 19th century steam engine isn't enough for you, down here in the yard you could also have a ride on something even more extraordinary. Hey Dave, I always thought a car on some tracks would be a good idea. What is this?
This is a Morris 25. I think there's one thing missing, isn't it? What no other cars have got?
Yeah, there's no steering
No
wheel.
steering wheel.
Well, let's get the show on the road, mate,
Right,
eh?
let's go, eh?
Well, I thought I'd experience some weird forms of transport, but obviously not all of them. Lovingly restored by Dave and his mates, this little Morris 25 dates back to the construction of this railway in the 1900s. So Dave, what was this used for?
This is a motor inspection car. It was mainly to deliver the pay to the workers who used to work along the railway lines before the days of electronic banking and stuff like that.
So all the workers were beavering away in this heat, and they'd see this car come over the hill. Happy days.
Happy days, it'd be paid.
So it's just adapted
Yeah,
with, instead of car tyres, just railroad tracks.
railway tracks.
wheels.
Yeah, it just drives like a normal car.
So what's its top speed, Dave?
Well, our maximum speed is 25 mile an hour. So on railway days, it probably
around to all the workers to pay them. Now, constructing the railway here must have been a terribly arduous task.
Obviously, it was all done by hand labour. There's no mechanical means. The only thing mechanical they ever used was horse and cart.
Really?
So sticking shovels, and if they come to a cutting or something they had to do, they used to drill it by hand and then blast it and down it.
The views of the outback from this little Morris are what I've been waiting for. These are the images of Australia that have made me so desperately want to come here, and now to be a part of them, trundling along in this strange contraption, my dreams have certainly come true. The only sporadic interruption and my complete contentment is coming from Dave's side of the car.
Oh,
Can't find them, grind them, Dave.
yes, it.
If you want to hire this, which I hardly recommend, it's $265 for basically a 32-kilometre trip. So you can hire it, and 3 or 4 of you can get in here for that, can't you, Dave?
Yeah, 3 or 4 again.
And also, Dave and his mates will lay on a little tea for you, included in the price. And also, if you can catch them, lamb's on the menu. One thing now is certain. In the golden glow of the evening sun, Quorn marks the gateway to another altogether very different Australia.